Hello guys, my name is Jamie. Welcome to maybe the most controversial video I'm ever gonna film. Today I'm gonna be talking about my most disappointing books of 2022. Yeah, I was very up in the air about filming this video. Sometimes negativity can be a bit much. However, I kind of thought about it and I was like, it's not that I'm being negative, it's that I just have critical thinking skills. We're just gonna make this video for a laugh. We're just gonna have some fun. This is purely gonna be entertainment value. I hate that I have to do a disclaimer, but I've been getting so many comments recently about the fact that I haven't liked people's favorite books. I'm not being hateful, no hate to the authors or the people that love these books. I just personally don't like them. It's my opinion and that's okay. And I feel like this video could be helpful for some people who maybe have opposite taste to me, but I think it's important sometimes to acknowledge the bad, which makes the good so much better. If you do like more positive videos, I have just uploaded best books of 2023, so I do recommend checking out that one first. But this is just the misses that I've had, I guess. The ones that didn't hit as hard. I think we're just gonna get straight into it. We're just gonna have some fun talking and ranting about books that maybe wasted our time. I am so lucky to only own 2 of these books. Everything else on the list I've either unhauled or read on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm feeling really good about that. But yeah, let's just get straight into it. We'll start with the 2 books that I physically own first. The first book that really disappointed me, this one really broke my heart, I think. This one was a devastating loss for me, but it is Hook, Line and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is the companion novel to It Happened One Summer. And this is really devastating for me because I love It Happened One Summer. I love that book so much. I think that was perfect enemies to lovers. So a book set in the same world following the main character from the first book's sister. I was so ready to love it and I was so ready to fall in love with these two's relationship. However, I actually ended up giving it 1 star because I hated it so much. Basically, this follows our 2 main characters, Fox and Hannah. They are friends. They met in the first book and started this year-long text relationship, but Hannah works on films, so she convinces the director of the film that she's working on to film in this small fishing town where Fox lives, so she can spend time with her sister and also spend time with Fox. And when they're there, Hannah is staying at Fox's place and they have to kind of resist temptation. So first of all, it's friends to lovers, which isn't my favorite anyway. So that was just unfortunate that this book happened to be a trope that I don't love. But also the characters, oh my god, I just feel like they were always destined to be side characters, to the point where Hannah literally constantly references herself as a side character. And that just for me was really awkward because I was reading it and I was like, yeah, you are. I'm sorry that you can't live up to Piper, but you are a side character. I'm sorry. It really wasn't hitting. And then Fox, I really loved him in the first book because he was just kind of the fun best friend, a bit silly, a bit of fuckboy energy, but not too much. Whereas in this book, he was talking about how his reputation is something that really bothers him because everyone just sees him as this playboy, this fuckboy who sleeps with lots of girls. He talked about it so constantly, this prison that he's living in, and it's you've created that prison for yourself. You made the choice to sleep around and never have a relationship and only have fuck buddies and have one night stands. So I really had no sympathy for him. So when he's making all this character growth and stuff, I was like, okay, well, I don't really care because you've spent the entire book whining about how everyone sees you as a fuckboy because you've behaved like a fuckboy. I just wasn't buying it. It was also incredibly boring, and some of the smut scenes, I was just oh no, the dirty talk really cringed me out so badly, and I just didn't buy their chemistry. I feel we were just told that they had heaps of chemistry because they texted for so long, but I didn't really buy that they were that attracted to each other. I have come to a point where the 3rd act conflict in romance novels, I know it's coming. I'm getting used to it. I'm not as upset about it anymore. I know that it's just kind of the formula of a rom-com. However, the 3rd act conflict in here was so stupid. Yes, I accept 3rd act conflicts now. However, they must be reasonable. They must be okay, I see why you guys have had this breakup. This one was silly, genuinely so silly. I feel Tessa Bailey was really stretching so hard to make that reach for this 3rd act conflict. Anyway, I'm so disappointed by this one. It just, yeah, I think because my expectations were so high with It Happened One Summer that this really hit so badly. It was an actual open wound in my heart. So yeah, this was an unfortunate 1 out of 5 stars, and I will still read more Tessa Bailey, but I'm not going to have as many high expectations as I had with this one. The next book that I was super disappointed by, I was just really disappointed because I had heard so many high praises for this book, and so many people had compared it to my favorite book of all time, The Secret History, and also it just had so many tropes and things featured in it that are so up my alley. And so reading it was so devastating because from the first chapter, I was like, oh, I know that this is going to be a flop. And it did flop. It was the Atlas 6. So I did do a reading vlog on this when I read like 5 popular BookTok books. I did that in like September or October. And this is one of the ones that I was looking forward to most. Basically, it is this fantasy novel, and there are 6 kind of magic wielders that get invited to this secret society. In that secret society, they realize that like they have to sacrifice one of them to be able to continue on further in the secret society, and they have this like mentor character. And so because I was like, oh my god, it's this big cast of like hopefully found family, but like they're all magic wielders, they've all got specific abilities, and they're like going to go into this like magical school training, like a secret society, like dark academia. It was just so pretentious. And I really don't like describing books as pretentious, because look at my favorite book of all time, The Secret History. Something that is described as pretentious, even though I think that's kind of like a false claim. Anyway, this video isn't about The Secret History, but this is actually pretentious. Like, if I just open to a random page, it will have the most overwritten passage of all time. Literally, the page that I opened to, Nico slid irascibly, I don't even know what that word is. Like, I need to like dictionary this word right now. What is that word? It was just so much. I just do feel like the writing was very flowery, but like no substance whatsoever. It was really interesting because there was actually no showing. There was just so much telling. Like, we are constantly told that a bunch of these characters are really, really powerful magic wielders, really powerful magicians. And then like we never once see them be powerful, like at all. And then also it's really awkward because it's so clear that our author cared so much about some characters, and then others were just kind of chucked to the wayside. Like, there was a character called Raina who I really thought was like quite interesting and quite cool, but then she was just so overshadowed by how much time our author spent with other characters. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but I just feel like the bias was so clear. I don't know, it just felt like a bit of a wank fest. I'm really sorry that it's really harsh, but that's how I felt reading it. It was also just boring and a slog to get through. And it's safe to say that I'm definitely not going to be picking up the sequel. But yeah, I'll probably be unhauling both these books at some stage. Yeah, they just fell a bit flat for me, unfortunately. The next book that really disappointed me was Accidentally Amy by Lynn Painter. This is another one where I just kind of bought into the hype. And it's not that I had heard so many good things about this novel. It's that I had heard so many good things about this author and her romances. However, this book was, how do I say this without being too harsh? It was the epitome of cringe for me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but it really was. So basically, this book is about this woman who has this like chance encounter with this guy. She's just about to start this new job, and she's about to run late, so she grabs someone else's coffee that says Amy on it, and then he like calls her Amy, and she's like, oh my god, he's so hot, but he thinks that I'm this girl called Amy, when she's actually, I don't even know what her real name is. And then she finds out that guy's her new boss, and he's all like, wait, your name's not Amy, so you were lying to me. It was so overdramatic and melodramatic purely just because of like a miscommunication. And I have no idea why she didn't just from the beginning say that, oh no, she got my name wrong, or something like that. And then after that whole instance, it then became this really weird enemies to friends to lovers kind of relationship. But the language that the characters used with each other, I felt like I was reading a middle grade. I just feel like the characters and the way they spoke, they were talking like 12-year-olds, but then acting like adults with their adult jobs and their adult sex lives. It was just really uncomfortable, and it had so many pet peeves. Like, our main character was constantly saying, oh my god, but like OMIGAWWWWWD. Please, can we not write it like that? Like, it just, oh, it really stressed me out. It shouldn't have stressed me out that much, but it just, it just felt really fan servicey. It was all like pumpkin spice lattes, Taylor Swift, like all that sort of stuff. And you know, I love a pumpkin spice. I'm a Swiftie, but it was just too much. It was too many references to that kind of aesthetic or lifestyle or whatever you call it. To the point where like she literally quoted the lyrics to All Too Well when like one of our main characters is talking about like their situationship. Don't you dare compare this situation to All Too Well. It was just so not fun, but I've heard so many good things about this author. I'm hesitant to try out another book because obviously if the first book that I read from her is gonna be a 1-star, why would I check out the others? If there's anyone in here who has like read Accidentally Amy and then Lynn Painter's other books and then can confirm that the other books are actually like pretty good and I'll enjoy them, please let me know, because I will go into it with an open mind, but I'm just not sure. Anyway, that's that book. Next is Ugly Love. We're not gonna talk about this for too long, but I did read this for the same booktok video that I did for Atlas 6. This basically is a novel about a toxic, like, friends with benefits situation that turned into a romance, and basically our main male character just treats the female main character like shit for the entire novel. And then also we get this other perspective from our male main character where he's talking about his like ex-girlfriend who is also his stepsister. People always leave that out. Not today. We're not leaving it out. And anyway, he has this like tragic ending to that relationship. But because I've spent the entire novel reading about the friends with benefits relationship from the girl's perspective and then the ex romance situation from the boy's perspective, I'm like, well, I don't believe that they're in love because he's just spent the entire novel talking about how much he loves his ex-girlfriend's stepsister moment. Like, it's just really confusing. Like, how am I supposed to believe their relationship when he's just saying all these beautiful things about his ex-girlfriend slash stepsister? And when I say beautiful, they're not actually that beautiful. He literally says like, I will make her love me or whatever. I really want to see her naked. Like, and she's also his stepsister, so I just feel like this book was very poorly written, and it's just really frustrating that so many young new readers are reading this and seeing it as a romance and being like, oh my god, like I relate so much. And because if someone's reading this and it can relate to this awful situationship they have in their life, they're like, oh my god, well, what I'm going through right now, this like emotional abuse, is romance. It's not romance. Like, he literally in one scene has sex with her and then just doesn't even say anything, walks out. She's lying there on the bed post that and he's just fucked off. It's just really, really not good, and the writing was bad, and I just don't like Colleen Hoover, and I don't like this romance novel, and yeah. Safe to say I would never be reading a Colleen Hoover book ever again on my YouTube channel or in my real life. This is going to be the last mention of her ever. So everyone say goodbye to Jamie's Colleen Hoover vents, because there's going to be no more airtime. Thank you. So the next book I'm going to talk about is Exciting Times by Nersha Dolan. I read this for a 24-hour readathon video and I rated this 1 star. It was just a whole lot of nothing. Like, it really was ironic that this book is called Exciting Times because the times were so boring. I'm sorry, I'm getting harsher and harsher as this video goes on. Basically, this novel is about this woman who moves to Hong Kong, and then I really don't know what happens next because like nothing happened. Like, she has these kind of relationships, I guess. Oh yeah, I think there's some sort of love triangle that goes on between this guy and this girl. So surely I would have loved this because it was like the bisexual agenda, but our main character was just so silly and nothing that I really just did not care. I think another thing that really bothered me about this book is that it was set in Hong Kong, but it really could have been set in like any country, and I just feel like that was kind of a really missed opportunity, because I've been to Hong Kong and it's a great country, but there was just like no like descriptions. There was no any semblance of culture like in this novel. I honestly felt like the author just spun a wheel and was like, okay, I'm going to put the book in this Asian country, and then just did like no research. I could be wrong, like assuming things about this author, but I just feel like it was an absolute missed opportunity. I don't know, it just felt like this book was trying to be Sally Rooney so badly, but it failed, and we're gonna move on. The next book is kind of another book that I don't really remember anything about, but it's this new adult romance called Dare You to Hate Me, and I just remember really disliking it because I gave it 1 star. This book is basically about these 2 childhood friends. Our main female main character runs away from home at kind of a young age, and that kind of ends their friendship, and then she goes through some very traumatic things, and then they meet again unexpectedly at college, and then have this kind of really toxic friend slash relationship kind of vibe going on. I really didn't want these 2 characters to be together because they were so toxic. You know, I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes I do love a toxic relationship, but this was just really frustrating, and the way the characters acted was really, really cringe. I really saw like no reason for them to act like that, and some of the way they spoke to each other, it was very Riverdale, like very dramatic, very Gossip Girl. And while I love like Gossip Girl and those sorts of shows, this was just, it was just not fun to read about. And also we were getting like a smutty scene within the first 30 pages, and I kind of hated that. Like, I really need the relationship to build before we get any of that sort of stuff. So it really made me think like maybe this book is just kind of like a smut book rather than a romance novel. But then the way that the relationship developed, it was just trying really hard to be a romance novel, but I just didn't want them to be together. And then it was really awkward because our girl main character was like talking about all this trauma that she went through and how she's trying to build from that, but then our male main character in his chapters, he'd just talk about sports, and so it was a really weird juxtaposition. Like, I'm kind of like, choose one. If you want to be like a fluffy college college sports romance, go for it. If you want to be something really dark, do that. It was a really weird kind of like, it really took me out of the story hearing about football when I just heard about like her really dark past. And then another thing is that our main character had like blue hair and really like thick eyeliner and stuff, and so then the way that she would talk about other girls who like didn't have blue hair and thick eyeliner was really like, I don't know, it feels like she thought that she was better than them because she had like an edgy look. And she would say things like, my makeup's my war paint and my clothes are my armor. And I was like, oh my god, how many cliches can we fit into one book, please? It was just, yeah, 1 star. Did not love it. Probably won't be reading this author again. Next, I will be talking about The Cheat Sheet. This is another 1-star romance. This is friends to lovers, sports romance. Our male main character is a famous sports player, and then the female main character is his best friend. And they end up fake dating because there was this like viral video that went around of the female main character when she was drunk talking about like how in love she was with the guy, and then everyone was like, oh my god, we need you guys to like be the face of this new ad campaign. Then they start to fake date, but yeah, eventually a romance ensues. This was just another book where the characters spoke like children, especially when our female main character was drunk. She literally was acting like she was 14 and had her first 2 vodka cruises for the first time. Like, a drunk adult does not behave like that. It was just so cringe and awkward, and I'm sorry for overusing the word cringe, but like I was sitting there getting secondhand embarrassment. I also absolutely hated how our female main character spoke about and spoke to the male main characters like girlfriends and ex-girlfriends. It was just giving like, oh, you can never compare to me because I'm the female best friend. Like, you are the reason why girls don't like their boyfriends to have female best friends. It was just so ugly and misogynistic. It felt like our author was doing too much by then making these girlfriends slash ex-girlfriends really nasty bitches, but I actually felt really bad for them because of course they'd be nasty to her when the female best friend is being horrible to them and basically just saying herself that she is a threat to them. And I actually just feel sorry for these girls, and I understand them because they have done nothing wrong. It is not a bad thing to date your male best friend who you're in love with. It was just so misogynistic. I feel like friends to lovers sometimes can be that. Like, it's a really difficult line to toe. I feel like People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry does it really, really well. And there are a lot of childhood friends to lovers books that do that nicely because they're like childhood friends. But this was just like, I just hate it. I just hate so much when our romance novels are like, well, every other girl is awful and I'm the best one. It's just so yucky, and I feel like this definitely had that. And then the ending also was really bad. This just wasn't a good book. I'm so sorry. Next, we finally don't have a romance. We have The Arrangement by Robin Harding. This was a thriller about a sugar baby, or this girl who's struggling financially, so she becomes a sugar baby, and then the first sugar daddy that she goes on a date with, she ends up developing feelings for. So we hear it from the 2 different perspectives. This book was just a bit nasty, I think. It just really grosses me out that this book was painting the sugar world as a really nasty thing. Like, I don't think it's wrong to write a thriller about this world. However, the way our female main character talked about the sugar world was really demeaning, and it's awkward because she's talking about herself like that, and she's saying like, oh, I would just never do that like those other sugar babies. And then there was this weird moment where like all these other people found out she was a sugar baby and then were like slut shaming her and like calling her a whore and really awful things. So if the general public is reacting like that, which I personally think is unrealistic, especially for like college age like art students, it's really clear what the author thinks of girls who participate in this line of work. And especially when our main character, who we're supposed to be rooting for, is saying like awful things about herself and how debased she feels and stuff like that, it just really put a gross taste in my mouth. I feel like the plot itself was fine, like, and interesting, and our male main character, like, sure, whatever, but just the way the female main character talked about it just really ruined the entire novel for me. And the thing is, I've read another book by this author which I thought was incredibly misogynistic, so this isn't just a one-off. Like, I think I'm just going to be staying away from this author because the way she talks about her own female characters is really nasty. Yeah, this book just wasn't good at all, basically just for those reasons, but I don't think I need any more reasons. It was just a bit gross. Next, I'm going to be talking about a book that I read at like the very beginning of the year, and it was in like 48-hour readathon, but it is A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. I think this is maybe my own fault because this is so not the sort of book that I usually read. Like these next two books I read because I'd heard good things or they sounded really good, and I just got it wrong, unfortunately. And I feel like this specific book, I can see why other people love it. It's just so not for me. Like this is definitely more of like a personal thing. But this book is about two childhood friends, and then when they're teenagers they fall in love and they start this relationship, and then our male main character, he all of a sudden has to leave town because his family's moving back to Russia or something. And after he moves, they decide they're going to be in like a long-term relationship, but all of a sudden Poppy, the female main character, like completely ghosts him, and then he comes back to town after 2 years and he's a completely different person, and he doesn't know why Poppy ghosted him and all this sort of stuff. We do find out why Poppy ghosted him quite early on, and it is like a heartbreaking reason. However, it didn't really bring out any tears in me because I found the book to be so melodramatic and a bit cheesy. It's probably the sort of book that would have tugged at my heartstrings when I was a teenager, but unfortunately I just am too old for it now, and I didn't end up shedding a tear, which is sad. Like I wish I did. I feel like maybe my heart is just a bit too cold now, but yeah, it just didn't really hit. I did find it to be too cheesy. These are all things that are my personal opinions because obviously this book is, I'm not the target audience. This book also featured a lot of music. Like I'm pretty sure one of the characters was a musician. That's just kind of a thing that I really don't like in books, is when the characters are like playing music and they're all like, oh, I get lost in the music or whatever, like stuff like that. It's just really cliche to me, and I really don't like when the author will include lyrics, like fictional lyrics that the character has like written, and then other characters are like, oh my god, like those lyrics are so beautiful, so amazing, because it's like the author like complimenting themselves in their own writing, which I just find like funny to me. And also I think there's a very big difference between being a lyricist and a novelist. So sometimes when I read these lyrics that these novelists have written in their books that they say are really good, I'm like, oh, it's not though, is it? Also, this is another one where some of the female side characters, the way they're talked about just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. That's always going to be a pet peeve of mine. And yeah, I understand that this book is for a different audience and all that sort of stuff, but just for those reasons that I have mentioned, it's just not my favorite. And then finally, the last book I'm going to talk about, which I do think still has a lot of value, however it just wasn't for me personally, is You've Reached Sam. This is another YA tragic romance vibe. Our female main character unfortunately loses her boyfriend from a very young age, like they're still teenagers, and then one day in a moment of grief she calls his cell phone and miraculously he picks up, and she has another opportunity to talk to him and say goodbye to him. This sounds like it would be so sad. It sounds like it would really pull at my heartstrings. However, I just was so emotionally disconnected from this. I really did not like it. I thought the writing wasn't that good, unfortunately. Just the structure of the novel I did not find to be that strong, especially because we don't really get an opportunity to see our main characters together in a relationship. So when she loses him in literally the first chapter of the book, she's already lost him, I was like, okay, yeah, that's like a sad concept, but I can't be there to experience the grief with the character, so I do feel a little bit emotionally disconnected. And I think our author definitely attempts to create moments where the characters are together. For example, there are quite a few chapters where it talks about moments that our characters had like in this relationship. However, the scenes are so short and choppy that I'll just be getting into this new scene and then it'll just switch to a next one. So I didn't have time to connect to them or like feel their chemistry or anything like that. I also found our character Sam to just be kind of bland. Like he was just a good guy and he didn't really have any flaws or anything that made me see him as a real human being. And I know that maybe that could be because our main character is really romanticizing him now that he's gone, but because of those reasons I was just kind of like, he's not real. He's not real. This is a fictional book, and I just wanted him to be a little bit more fully developed. However, this definitely isn't the worst out of all these books. I did rate it 2 stars rather than 1, but it was just so disappointing because first of all, the cover, absolutely stunning, and also the concept to me sounds so great. And I feel like if this same concept was maybe in like an adult novel, I might have liked it a bit more, which I know is silly because I'm an adult, I should just be reading adult books. But there are quite a few YA books that I read this year that I have very high praises for. So yeah, this was just an unfortunate miss for me. And that concludes the video. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you didn't get offended if I criticized one of your faves. Just remember, you're still allowed to love it. Like, I am not the, I don't know, the speaker of everyone. Like, what I say doesn't necessarily go. These are just my opinions, and I really hope that I conveyed them well. I would hate to just be hating on a book to hate on a book and be edgy. I definitely feel like these books, I had reasons to dislike them, and I hope that you guys can kind of understand those reasons by watching this video. So yeah, those are my most disappointing books of 2022. I really hope that 2023 is going to be a better year, and maybe I read more favorites than disappointments this year. But yeah guys, just another cheeky reminder that all my socials are linked down below, and I also have my Patreon where I do heaps of exclusive content. I honestly love it on there. I love creating videos for Patreon and doing all the live streams and stuff. So if you are interested in seeing more from me, I would really love it if you checked it out. But yeah, again guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon in another video.